So just checking the front wheel bearing for play, grab the wheel and try to shake it from top to bottom. And you can see here there is actually quite a bit of play. So just giving the wheel a quick spin, I could actually hear how noisy the bearing was, just spinning it by hand. Quick rundown of parts to remove. We're going to be removing the rotor, the caliper, a bunch of other junk in the way, and ultimately remove the knuckle or spindle assembly. Hat gun doesn't have the jam to undo the nuts. Obviously, if we try to breaker bar, the wheel is just going to spin. The wheel nuts can spin. So what we could do is using a pry bar, put it in here, rest it up against the brake caliper mount, and as we try to rotate it, it wedges it. Now we should be able to use the breaker bar and crack the nut loose. There we go. Now that it's cracked loose, we can continue with the impact. So we've got the hub assembly on the knuckle supported in the press. Let's see now if we can get this to press out. Want to make sure that the hub doesn't drop down to the ground. It's quite easy to damage the ABS, the tone ring. So this is actually pressing. Okay, so we've got the hub, spindle sitting on the bench. We can see there's this big C-clip inside snap ring that's holding the bearing in place. So we want to remove that. All right, fixtured back up in the press. Let's try pressing out the actual bearing. Okay, let's have a little look at our hub and our bearing. So our hub assembly there and the actual bearing. So when we pressed out the hub, the inner race, which would normally be in here, is seized on to the hub, which is pretty normal. It's a press fit. It's not going to come off. So how do we get this off now? We have our ABS wheel speed tone ring on there, which means we can't really get in with a puller of any type. We can't come in this way. There's not really anything to grip. So a couple options are using a cutting torch, which is messy. We could try coming in through one of these holes with a punch or a chisel and hope that the bearing will pry out. However, I've done a few of these, and what I'm going to do is weld a piece of pipe onto here, and then we can support it in the press. Okay, so I've got a piece of exhaust tubing welded on to the inner race. I've welded it not all the way around, kind of tacked it in about 4 spots. I then welded these two pieces of square tubing. So now I'll be able to put it in the press and press out the hub. Okay, let's just kind of analyze our bearing failure here. So this was the inner race and inner side of the bearing. Looks nice and clean. Let's flip it over. We can see how discolored the ball bearings are on the, this would have been the outside of the bearing. And looking at the inner race, again, discolored. We can see lots of brinelling where the bearing has actually worked into the race. So again, kind of discolored. Chances are, I would guess that the seal has failed, allowing dirt to get in there, and then things going south from there. Let's have a look at what we got in our new wheel bearing set. So, one new wheel bearing, one new snap ring, we've got a new axle nut, and looks like we have a few other miscellaneous nuts here, probably for our tie rod and for our pinch bolt on the strut. So a quick note when we're pressing in the bearing, we don't want to press on just the center hub, we don't want to press on the inner race of the bearing. Basically that's going to drive our outer race into the bearings and damage them, so we need to press on this outer race. So not a totally necessary step. I like to take a bit of grease and just lubricate the inside of the bore on our knuckle. As well, we'll take a little bit of grease and put it onto the hub. This will just allow things to press back together a bit easier, like so. So definitely one of the tougher things using the press is how do we support our workpiece. In this case, I'm using the old bearing to support and press on the new bearing. Basically, we're going to press the entire knuckle onto the bearing. So again, a combination of bits and pieces laying around the shop. Maybe we'll use this socket. And let's see. So final step will be pressing the hub back into the bearing. And again, we want to, we're going to have to support from the inner race and then press our hub down onto it. Steel adapter, put the hub in. Slide up a bit better.